Your election headlines tonight: celebration and devastation. Norfolk keeps the same set of MPs, but not without some scares along the way. The county's verdict: we get your reply on a historic night, the snap election, with a surprise result. And in our special report after the break, we hear from experts in business, health, and our local council leaders on what the election means for you. Hello and welcome to this Mustard election special, where we start with dawn breaking on a night of drama. That's drama despite the fact that no seats have changed hands in the county. The Lib Dems' Norman Lamb held off the Tory challenge in North Norfolk. Labour's Clive Lewis scored a crushing victory in Norwich South. And here, as the dust settles at Norwich North, on a torrid night for the Conservatives, Chloe Smith was pushed closer than she might ever have imagined. A success sealed with a sincere handshake, but for Chloe Smith, there was little sign of the scenes of joy that accompanied her win 2 years ago. This time round, the Conservative celebrations in the early hours in Norwich North were low-key, a majority cut to just 507 votes, a hung parliament, and a battle far closer than expected.
I take nothing for granted ever in the work I do here in Norwich North. I, as I say, am delighted to have been re-elected to serve, and I never focus on the numbers within that. I'm absolutely honoured that so many people have put that trust in me, and I would have been honoured to do it had it been a majority of 1 or had it been a majority of 100, or and on we go. It's what I do, and I'm privileged to do it.
For Labour, so close yet so far. Dr Chris Jones polling more than 21,000 votes, but still not enough to topple the Tories.
It was always going to be a stretch to try and win a seat like Norwich North, so I think we're pleased that we came as close as we did, but yes, obviously frustrated not to have made the last few hundred votes to win. I think the Labour Party is back in there pitching. Jeremy Corbyn has had a great campaign. I think the more that people have heard his message and heard what he's had to say, the more they've liked it and responded to it. And the Conservatives have been shown for the spent force that they are. Really, they've got no ideas, no vision for this country other than sound bites.
And for the other parties, the end of a difficult campaign, particularly for the Greens, who lost their deposit in Norwich North, many of their votes going to bolster the Labour charge.
The Green vote got squeezed. We knew it was going to happen. Didn't realise Norwich North was going to be that close, but obviously, in a way, I'm quite sad that Chris Jones couldn't get in for the Labour Party. But I know a lot from our vote last time. We're down probably to around about 2% from 4%. So we've really lost. We've been squeezed in this.
And so to the fallout in Norwich and beyond, the uncertainty that comes with a hung parliament, a party with no majority, imminent Brexit negotiations, and repeated calls for the Prime Minister to step down. One of Norfolk's long-standing Conservatives, Keith Simpson, re-elected in Broadland this morning with another massive majority, admits it has been a damaging night for Theresa May.
I think it's just too early to say. People are saying, media commentators, well, it's the young, they've all signed up. I think there were a whole series of events, if you look back on the less than fortunate circumstances of our manifesto, that Corbyn seemed to relax campaigning, rather like an old lefty from the 1970s, as I would say, and a lot of people rather liked it.
So after a long, tense night, a glance at the Norfolk map will tell you that nothing's changed. Quick chat with the parties, though, and you'll hear that's far from the case. Rob Setchell, Mustard TV, Norwich.
Here in North Norfolk, it was always predicted to be close. Would Liberal Democrat Norman Lamb be able to fight off the challenge of the Conservatives? In the end, he did, and it was slightly more comfortable than even he could possibly have imagined.
Lamb, Norman, Peter, Liberal Democrat. 25,260.
I feel an enormous sense of personal pride here and appreciation for the people of North Norfolk for showing faith in me. But I think it will be seen as a historic miscalculation. The theme of what I tried to say was about taking people for granted. So locally, I think many people, including the media, took people for granted. They assumed that 8,000 UKIP voters would switch to the Conservatives. But nationally, there was this assumption that they would win with a big majority, and that, in effect, sort of arrogance leads to people becoming unstuck, and that's what's happened in a big way tonight.
punching the air like a winning goal in the cup final, and a cuddle for his wife Mary. Norman Lamb celebrates a victory in North Norfolk that even he wasn't sure would come. The Lib Dem's been MP here since 2001, but there were plenty of predictions his seat could be swept away in a Tory tidal wave.
I'm always a glass half empty type of person in campaigns. I always fear the worst, but we were getting such a positive reaction from people, including people who were telling us that they'd always voted Conservative and that they were voting for me this time.
This corner of Norfolk got particularly tasty when UKIP decided not to field a candidate and urged their supporters to vote for the pro-Brexit Conservative James Wilde. But it wasn't as simple as that. A whopping 75% turnout, a slightly reduced 3,500 majority for Norman, with the Conservatives once again coming in second and Labour in third. It was a bitter blow for the Tories, with candidate James Wilde not hanging around afterwards to speak to the media.
Given the short campaign, I think we've a lot to be pleased about with the campaign. Obviously we'd like to have won, but I think we've laid sure foundations to the future. We had an excellent candidate in James, local lad, come back to where his family come from, where a huge number of his family live. I think he's a lot to offer for this area.
Nationally, Labour have been celebrating gaining seats. They did gain votes here, but they think tactical voting was going on to keep the Tories out.
It's a disappointing result for Labour, but we've had a great night across the whole country, and I think that's what we're looking to build on in the future. But also what tonight has proved in North Norfolk is that we have a substantial anti-Tory majority in this part of the world, and we, as the Labour Party, need to make sure that we gain more of that going forward in future elections.
If the Conservatives were to achieve the landslide they were hoping for, this is just the kind of seat they would needed to have won, and a lot more of these votes would have needed to have turned blue. But in the end, after 16 years, it's another vote for Norman, leaving the Tories to try again next time, and after last night's results, who knows how soon that'll be. Neil Perry, Mustard TV, North Walsham.
Here at the Assembly House in Norwich South, it was a result that was expected to be quite tight, but in the end it was an easy win for Labour's Clive Lewis, who not only defended his seat, but actually more than doubled his majority.
I hereby declare that Clive Anthony Lewis has been duly elected.
V for victory, or signalling his second win. Either way, Clive Lewis is not shy about showing his joy at retaining Norwich South. It echoed his celebration from 2 years ago. But this time round, he had even more to cheer about, more than doubling his majority from 7,500 to 15,500.
We didn't expect this magnitude of victory, and we certainly didn't expect the kind of results that we're getting across the country. I think our secret weapon was Theresa May and her hubris. That aided us enormously. And I think if you're going to do this kind of Muhammad Ali, I am the greatest leader ever, yeah, and you don't step up to the plate. In fact, you trip over your own feet on the way to the ring and don't turn up. The British public don't like that. If you're going to boast about how strong and stable you are, you better be strong and stable.
In total, Clive secured 31,000 votes, a 61% share compared to 39% in 2015. In second place was Conservative Lana Hempsall, followed by Lib Dem James Wright, then Richard Bierman for the Greens. 51,000 people in the constituency voted, almost 70% of the population, up from 65% in the last general election. The seat had been a serious target for the Conservatives, with 2 visits from Theresa May to try and boost local support. And despite still being unable to unseat her opponent, Lana says she is taking away some positives from her campaign.
No, pleased actually, pleased. My campaign went really, really, really well. It just felt like it went from strength to strength to strength. I did increase the Conservative numbers by quite a bit. I haven't looked at them properly, but my campaign team are really happy and should be quite proud.
But for the Liberal Democrats and Green Party, it was a different story. A surge in tactical voting saw many of their supporters lend their vote to Labour, greatly reducing their share, with Green candidate Richard Bierman even failing to reach the 5% needed to get his deposit back.
I was expecting a little bit more diversity in the votes. I was hoping that people would actually vote for what they believed in, because there are a lot of people in this city who don't particularly want Labour or the Conservatives, but of course they felt compelled by the national media to choose one or the other.
The Conservatives weren't close to beating Labour, so I felt that was unnecessary. I understood why people wanted to make that decision, but I think it's been proved that Clive's got a fairly healthy majority.
Clive says he will do what he can to represent the supporters of what he calls the progressive parties who lent him their votes. But with his wedding taking place while he was on the campaign trail, he says he won't be forgetting his new wife, Katie Steele.
One of my priorities is actually making sure that she's looked after and we have a proper honeymoon at some point. But that's a little bit later on down the line. We've got work to do. I don't know what's going to happen when we get back to Parliament, but we'll hit the ground running. Look, when I came into the count today, I passed 7, 8 people sleeping in doorways, many of them very young. It made me angry, it makes me want to cry. They need a voice, they need people to speak up for them, they need a Labour government. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we're going to work towards that.
Lauren Du Bois, Mustard TV, Norwich South.
Right, time for a look at the results in the other 6 Norfolk constituencies. In Broadland, Keith Simpson, who's represented the constituency since 2010, having previously been the MP for Mid-Norfolk, won with 32,406 votes. In second, Labour's Ian Simpson with more than 16,500, an increase of 10.9 percentage points on the last general election. UKIP floundered with only 1,594 votes, a fall of 13.9 percentage points on 2015, and part of a massive collapse in votes for the party across the country. In North West Norfolk, Conservative Henry Bellingham won 29,408 votes. Bellingham has been the MP there since 2001, having also represented the seat from 1983 to 1997. Labour's Joe Rust came second with 15,620 votes, an increase of 9 percentage points on the party's performance in 2015. Mid-Norfolk was held by the Tories, with George Freeman getting 59% of the vote. Labour again came second, with their challenger Sarah Simpson getting 16,742 votes, a rise of 11.7 percentage points on 2015. In South West Norfolk, Tory Liz Truss, who like George Freeman was first elected in 2010, also kept her seat. She gained 62.8% of the vote, with Labour's Peter Smith getting 27.8%. The big story, though, was UKIP's David Williams, only winning just over 2,500 votes, a fall of 18.3 percentage points on the last general election. Great Yarmouth also stayed Conservative blue, with Brandon Lewis, another winner in 2010, keeping his seat. He won 23,901 votes, up 11 percentage points on 2015. Labour again came second with 15,928 votes, 7 percentage points up on the last general election. UKIP were third, but once again suffered a massive fall in support, with votes of the party down by 16.8%. And finally, in South Norfolk, the Conservative incumbent Richard Bacon won more than 35,000 votes. Labour's Danielle Glavin came second with just over 18,900, growing her support by 12.5 percentage points on 2015. So, blue across the board for those 6 constituencies, which means, as with Norwich North, Norwich South and North Norfolk, all the candidates across Norfolk defending their seats were re-elected. So that's what's happened, but what does it all mean, and what will the uncertainty of a hung Parliament bring to Norfolk? After the break, we'll be hearing from City and County Council leaders, as well as key figures in business and health. Find out what they think about what the future holds in just a few minutes. Do stay with us.
Hello, welcome back to this election special on Mustard TV. Over the next 10 minutes or so, we're going to try and figure out what it all means. We're going to speak to you, the public, as well as experts in the worlds of health and politics. And first, we are joined by Alan Finlayson from the University of East Anglia, Professor of Politics. Alan, where do we go from here?
I wish I could give everybody all the answers they need. So what's happened is, it's all about which party can win a vote of confidence in Parliament, and the Conservatives, to a lot of people's surprise, didn't win enough seats to win that vote of confidence in Parliament. So what are they going to do? Well, what they've decided to do is go ahead and form a minority government. So it's not a coalition, they haven't made a formal agreement or a plan with anyone else, but they're going ahead as a minority government, aiming to win that vote of confidence with the support of the Democratic Unionist Party from Northern Ireland. What they're going to have to give the DUP for that, we don't quite know yet, but it seems that they've reached some kind of informal agreement that they can carry on governing so long as the DUP gives them their support.
How do you think we found ourselves in this situation? Because a few weeks ago this was a done deal. Theresa May was cruising to a strengthened majority. What went wrong for her?
Absolutely. That's a question we'll be thinking about for weeks and years to come, I think. It does seem, from what evidence we've got so far, that a lot of people made up their minds to vote Labour just in the last 2 or 3 weeks and some in the last few days. So it really is a case where the campaign made all the difference. So I think a couple of things happened, really. The first was that people saw Theresa May up close for the first time. They hadn't, because of course she became Prime Minister through an internal party election. They saw her and they weren't that impressed. On the other hand, Jeremy Corbyn, who everyone thought people weren't going to like, they saw him up close and personal for the first time in a way, not just being described by other people, and more people liked him than we were expecting, and that's the result we've got.
It's fascinating stuff, Alan. We'll come back to you in a minute. I want to just check in with Mark Summers, though. He's at County Hall and he's got the County Council leader, Cliff Jordan.
Right, we're here with Cliff Jordan. He's a Tory councillor and, of course, the leader of Norfolk County Council. First of all, Cliff, just your thoughts off the back of what happened last night.
Oh, well, it's sad, really sad. I thought that Theresa May, when she asked for a mandate to do the job, that the public would give her a mandate to do the job, because Brexit is really, really important. So, but events have taken as they are, that's it.
We'll start with Brexit. Of course, people would be voting on what they thought of her plans and her leadership going into those negotiations. Do you feel like that may have affected how people voted?
I've no idea. What I can say is they want to look at the stock market. They also want to look at the price of the pound and see how important it is. Worldwide, it's important, Brexit, because we voted to come out, whether we want to come out or not. That's what we're going to do. Therefore, it is so important to get this right. Negotiations are now going to happen in a few days' time. Who do you take to put in there? Well, I don't think it would be a good idea to change the Prime Minister at this stage, personally.
You see the results coming in. You see that previously people predicting potentially quite a big Tory majority. That obviously hasn't come to fruition. What was going through your mind?
Well, I think, to be honest, the back of my mind, people didn't like some of the policies that came out in the manifesto. We saw, the old people getting about their winter payments and getting upset and so forth and so on. So if they'd explained that better, I mean, they really, it was poorly run, if I have to. I genuinely mean the Conservative campaign was poorly run.
Do you feel that uncertainty at the top in Westminster is going to lead to issues in local government?
That's hard to judge. I would like to know who I'm going to be dealing with in the Secretary of States and so forth. I think there'll be a real look at what's going on. I think this is a sea change. I mean, whether we like it or not, Labour has played a blinder. I don't know where this orchard is full of money. I'd love to go and raid it, but I don't know where it is. That's somewhere, because Corbyn have said plenty of money. Well, let's have it.
We're rather upset about the result. We want the stability of a strong government.
I'm on young people's side. I think Corbyn probably should have got in, and he would have made a difference to them. And they all went and voted this time, and that's admirable.
I'm joined by the leader of the Norwich City Council now, Alan Waters. So just first of all, your reaction?
Delighted, actually. I mean, amazed in some respects when the exit poll came through. I think it took everybody's breath away. But I think, on the other hand, just having a feeling about how the campaign was going over the 7 weeks, we could see that things were moving in Labour's direction.
What does that mean for Norwich, this uncertainty?
Well, what we have is some certainty in terms of a very strong performance in Norwich South by Clive Lewis. We have Norwich North now a highly marginal seat. I think there will be an election within the next year, so that uncertainty about how we move forward goes ahead. But I do think there's now an opportunity to turn back what has been a mantra for the last 7 years of inevitable austerity.
There's obviously maybe not uncertainty here, but uncertainty in Parliament at the moment. How much does that filter down to the City Council then?
Well, what we will need some certainty over are some of the key decisions that this Parliament has got to make about how it approaches the Brexit negotiations. The second thing we need from Parliament is we need a decent level of funding for the City Council and for the public services in the city. And I think there's now enough political pressure to make that happen. And we will certainly be adding our voice to that cause.
I'm quite pleased. I like a coalition. I think it makes the big party work a bit harder.
Genuinely surprised. I think Labour were certainly cast as being down and out in the polls when the election was called, and whilst they've still lost the election, they put in a far more creditable performance than anyone was expecting.
Now I'm here with Jonathan Cage, President of Norfolk Chamber of Commerce, to find out what the business community is thinking. Jonathan, how will firms be reacting to today's result?
I think we're a bit of shock. I don't think they necessarily expected a hung Parliament, but as long as we now get some sort of sustainable and steady government sorted out quickly in the next few days, I think people will just carry on. But I think a bit of a shock.
So the key is stability now.
Absolutely, yeah.
With these Brexit negotiations coming up just over a week away, they're due to start a week on Monday. What will the priorities be for businesses in Norfolk? What will they want to see from those negotiations?
Well, I think it's from the point of view in terms of businesses, I believe it's going to take some time to actually see some real reactions out of the negotiations. But we need to have the European government and everybody else taking it seriously. That's the key thing. So they've got to be able to believe that the people who are sat there on behalf of the UK are representing us and are going to negotiate strong. So but I also do think that there's now possibly a different type of politics going to be coming out of this. So I think the Conservatives will need to take a bit more of a view of the other parties' interests in this.
So that could mean perhaps a softer Brexit and perhaps a pulling back on a lot of the kind of hard Brexit rhetoric. How would that be greeted by firms?
Well, I think that quite a lot of firms quite like obviously the idea of, because they're concerned about, especially in Norfolk, of the workforce and migration for workforce, and I think that is quite an important thing that lots of people are still wondering how that's going to work out. So if that actually can be secured, as well as getting a reasonable trade deal, then I think that will be really welcomed by Norfolk businesses. And I think at the moment that's just being taken as granted that ain't happening. So that will be interesting to see that comes up the agenda.
I'm a Tory supporter, but I feel this is perhaps the worst result possible.
I'm glad that Labour did well because I voted Labour in the election, but just worried about the Conservatives teaming up with the DUP.
The amount of investment that has been taking place in the NHS over the years has been very secondary care focused, hospital focused, not in general practice. And general practice and primary care has really been suffering from that. Consequently, we're just finding it harder and harder to deal with everything that we have to do. Patients are far more complicated now, far more complex. They require a lot more of our time and our attention so that we can keep people well. And we're keeping people well for longer in their lives. And that needs to be resourced. But it just hasn't been coming through. And what we really need from the new government is recognition of that and something being done about it. And it needs to be more than the political banding that has been populated about before the election.
Really annoyed because it's now left a very messy situation with Brexit and going back to not one party actually going to be running the country.
I felt that it all gone wrong for Theresa May. I had full faith in her, but she didn't need to do it. She didn't need to do it.
Okay, that is about all we've got time for this election special, but just before we go, I do want to get from Alan what you think the thing that we'll remember about this campaign will be, the election of 2017. What will it be remembered for?
Wow, I think there's going to be a lot of things to remember it for. I think we're going to certainly remember it as being a campaign election in which the campaign really made a difference, just totally changed the fortunes of the parties in a very unexpected way. But also longer term, Tories are back in Scotland, that's a big change, and Labour has shown that with this new Corbyn approach it can get electoral success, and they're not going to back down from that for a while.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all our guests over the last half an hour or so on this election special. You can catch it again on our YouTube channel, that's Norfolk Now, but for now, my thanks to everyone who's joined us. Good night.